The image of the Egyptian carver is often painted in sun-bleached strokes, a mythic figure bringing monumental forms from the desert cliffs. But this life was not a painting. It was a physical discipline defined by the fine limestone dust on the tongue, the dull warmth rising through sandal soles, and the steady, woody rhythm of a striker meeting a chisel. Welcome to the canvas traveler. Tonight we step past the spectacle of history to find the human texture within it. Here you will not just observe the carver. You will feel the profound weight of the sun-baked world and the intense focus required to bring forth a perfect line from the unyielding rock. It is a journey into the rhythm of the craft. But before the journey continues, a brief pause belongs to the present moment, where simple gestures of support quietly sustain this space and leave small traces of connection across distance and time. These traces linger as attention begins to loosen its hold on the modern world. Screens, clocks, and obligations soften at the edges, their presence slowly fading into the margins of the night. The familiar angles of the room soften. The walls dissolve into a vast expanse under a pale, hazy dome. The artificial quiet is replaced by a deep, ancient stillness that holds the weight of the landscape. The breath adapts to the dry, mineral air. The year is circa 1350 BCE, and the story begins in the blinding white glare of a temple courtyard. The day's heat settles deep into the stone, a constant pressure against the back and shoulders. A profound stillness hangs in the air, broken only by the slight hiss of sand moving across the ground. The shadow of a massive column offers the only relief, a sharp line of cool darkness drawn against the blinding white of the courtyard. Here, in this sliver of shade, the body finds a moment of quiet repose. You feel the fine, almost weightless powder of limestone settling on the skin, a pale film that coats the arms and face. It is a taste on the tongue, a dryness in the back of the throat. Every slow breath draws in the grit of the work, a constant reminder of the material that defines the days. The dust is not an intrusion, it is simply part of the air itself. The world is a landscape of sun-bleached limestone and ochre earth. The light is so intense it washes the color from the sky, leaving a pale, hazy dome overhead. Distant figures move slowly through the heat, their forms shimmering and indistinct. The sheer scale of the construction site is immense, a place of silent, patient labor where progress is measured over lifetimes, not hours. The focus remains on the single block of stone nearby. A sound drifts from far across the open space, a steady, percussive rhythm of a wooden mallet meeting a copper tool. It is a slow and deliberate beat, the heartbeat of this place. There is no urgency in the sound, only a patient and unending chipping away at the stone. That distant work is a mirror to the work done here, a shared, unspoken purpose that fills the vast silence. The ground beneath is a mix of packed earth and sharp, stony debris. The leather of the sandals is thick, but the heat still works its way through the soles, a dull warmth that rises into the feet. You notice the way the light catches on countless tiny flakes of stone, making the ground glitter as if covered in a fine metallic dust. Each step is a careful, deliberate placement. Thirst is a constant companion in this world of dry heat. It is a tightness in the throat, a slight rasp to the breath. The water in the clay jar is warm, tasting of earth and minerals, but it offers a profound relief. A slow sip is taken, a moment to let the coolness spread through the chest. The simple act of drinking is a ritual, a small but necessary anchor in the long, hot afternoon. The eyes adjust to the deep shade, and the surface of the nearby wall comes into focus. Red ochre lines, faint and precise, map out the shapes yet to be given form. They are the silent instructions, a guide for the hands left by the draftsman. These lines represent the order of the universe, a perfect and unchanging pattern that must be carefully released from the raw material of the mountain. A small brown lizard darts across a sun-baked stone, its movements impossibly quick before it freezes into perfect stillness. It becomes a part of the rock, its scales the same texture as the ancient surface. The creature is a master of this environment, a small life that understands the rhythm of heat and shadow, of patience and sudden, focused action. It is a silent teacher in the art of endurance. You feel the slight breeze that signals the slow turning of the afternoon. It offers no real coolness, but it stirs the air, lifting the finest particles of dust into a swirling, golden haze. It is a soft and almost imperceptible shift in the environment, a signal that the deepest heat of the day has passed. The work will soon resume, but for now, there is only this moment of observation. The tools lie on a piece of heavy cloth, protected from the grit. The copper chisel is cool to the touch, its edge sharpened to a precise angle. Beside it rests the heavy wooden mallet, its surface smoothed and darkened by countless hours of use. These are not just objects, but extensions of the will, the instruments through which perfect, divine forms are brought forth from the unshaped and chaotic stone. The overwhelming sensation is one of permanence. The half-finished temple walls rise against the sky, monuments built to outlast the sun. The weight of the stone is palpable, a silent pressure that seems to absorb all sound and effort. To work here is to be a small part of something immense and eternal, to add a single, perfect mark to a story that began long before memory. The day begins not with a sound, but with a subtle shift in the quality of the darkness. The air in the small dwelling cools, and the rough fibers of the sleeping mat become more distinct against the skin. Before the sun has risen, a rhythm begins, a slow and steady preparation for the labor to come. The body moves through familiar motions in the pre-dawn quiet, a pattern repeated each day without thought. The first task is the water jar. Its baked clay surface is cool in the half-light, its weight a familiar burden against the shoulder. The path to the river is well worn, a smooth depression in the earth trodden by countless feet over countless years. The air is still and heavy with the scent of wet silt and damp reeds, a stark contrast to the dry dust that will soon fill the day. The jar is lowered into the slow-moving current, and the sound of filling is a deep, hollow resonance. The weight increases with each passing moment, a physical measure of the day's primary hardship. Lifting it from the water is a strain deep in the back and legs. The journey back is a careful, balanced walk, each step measured to avoid spilling a single precious drop of the murky, life-sustaining liquid. At the worksite, the great stone walls are gray and cold in the early light. The air is clear, free of the shimmering heat that will later rise from the ground. The tools are retrieved from their cloth wrapping, their surfaces still holding the night's chill. The copper of the chisel feels dense and solid in the hand, a familiar counterpoint to the rough texture of the unfinished limestone wall that awaits the day's labor. The work begins with a single, sharp tap. The wooden striker meets the end of the chisel, and a small puff of white dust is released. There is a specific sound to it, a clean, resonant note that speaks of a well-aimed strike. The process is one of removal, of patiently chipping away the excess to reveal the form that waits within the stone. It is a slow and deliberate conversation. The body settles into a steady, unbroken rhythm. The arm rises and falls, the striker landing in the same place with the same force, time and time again. It is a motion that becomes as natural as breathing. The focus narrows until the entire world is reduced to the sharp edge of the copper tool and the faint red ochre line it must follow. The mind becomes still, lost in the repetition. Hours pass marked only by the slow crawl of a shadow across the stone. The initial coolness of the morning gives way to a persistent, oppressive heat. Sweat traces paths through the white dust on the skin, creating pale rivulets on the arms and face. You feel a dull ache begin to settle deep in the muscles of the shoulder and back, a familiar companion to the day's work. The midday pause is brief. A piece of hard, dry bread is eaten in the thin strip of shade at the base of the wall. Its taste is plain, mixed with the ever-present flavor of limestone dust. The water from the jar is warm now, no longer refreshing but still necessary. The body absorbs the sustenance, converting it into the energy needed for the second half of the day's rhythmic, unchanging labor. As the sun begins its long descent, the light changes. The low, angled rays catch the carved surfaces, throwing the shallow reliefs into sharp contrast. The forms emerge from the flat stone, brought to life by the interplay of light and shadow. You notice the way the eye of a carved figure seems to gain a depth it did not possess in the flat light of noon. This is the purpose of the work. The final hour of labor is the most difficult. The muscles are tight, the movements of the arm are slower, less precise. Each strike of the mallet requires a greater effort of will. The focus is entirely on maintaining the rhythm, on ensuring the last chip of stone is as cleanly cut as the first. The work demands the same perfection from the tired body as it does from the fresh one. A signal unspoken and unseen marks the end of the day. It is simply a shared understanding that the light is no longer sufficient for the fine work. The tools are carefully cleaned with a piece of rough linen, the fine copper edge inspected for any sign of damage. They are wrapped and stored away, ready for the cycle to begin again with the next day's light. The day's labor is complete. The world operates according to an unspoken and unshakable order. The red ochre lines on the stone are not a suggestion. They are a fragment of a divine and perfect pattern. To deviate from this guide, even by a hair's breadth, is to introduce chaos into a sacred design. The work is not to create, but to reveal what is already there, to remove the veil of stone that conceals the underlying truth. A misplaced strike of the mallet is not a simple error. It is an irreversible flaw. The stone does not forgive. A chip that breaks incorrectly can shatter a delicate line, rendering the entire block imperfect and useless. There is no correction, only removal. The failed stone must be cut away, a silent monument to a moment of lost focus, a disruption of the universal rhythm that the work must embody. Higher-ranking carvers move through the site, their presence a weight in the air. They do not speak. An inspection is a long, silent gaze, a careful tracing of a finished line with a finger. Approval is their continued silence and the act of moving on. A flaw is noted with a single, slow tap on the stone, a sound that communicates the failure more completely than any word could. The hand that holds the chisel is not a source of personal expression. It is an instrument, a conduit for a tradition that stretches back beyond living memory. The forms being carved, the falcon's head, the coil of rope, the seated figure, are precise and unchanging. They have been perfected by generations, and the task is to replicate that perfection, to submerge the self in the service of the eternal form. Every block of limestone possesses its own nature, its own internal laws. It has a grain that must be read, a hidden fragility that must be respected. You feel for the subtle changes in resistance as the chisel cuts, learning the stone's language of pressure and release. To work against the material is to invite fracture and failure. The stone itself is a silent partner that demands respect for its inherent rules. The sun is the absolute authority on time. Its position in the sky dictates the rhythm of the day, from the cool beginning of work to the brief respite in the midday heat, to the final moments of angled light. No one questions its rule. In the same way, the great river dictates the rhythm of the year, its flooding and receding a cycle that governs all life and all labor. The symbols being carved are not mere decoration. Each line and curve is a vessel of power, a functional part of the cosmic engine. An ankh is not a picture of life, it is an active agent of life itself. The sacredness of the work comes from this reality. You notice the immense care taken with each form, a focus born from the understanding that these images maintain the balance of the world. From a distance, an overseer watches the progress. The figure holds a long, straight reed, an instrument of measurement and alignment. There is no threat in this observation, only the embodiment of the standard. A slow, deliberate point with the reed toward a section of the wall is a silent instruction, a demand for a higher level of precision, a call to better align the work with the perfect order. The most demanding rule is the one that must be imposed on the self. It is the law of the steady breath, the controlled muscle, the unwavering eye. The outside world of heat, thirst, and fatigue must be silenced. The internal world of doubt or impatience must be stilled. The body must become as reliable and precise as the copper tool it wields, an unwavering servant of the pattern. When a section is complete, it belongs to the temple. It is absorbed into the greater whole, its creation anonymous. The reward is not ownership, but the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly executed line, of a surface brought to life by shadow and light. It is the feeling of having acted as a true conduit for the divine order, leaving a small piece of enduring perfection in a world of dust and decay. The usual rhythm of the day has a familiar cadence, a cycle of effort and rest dictated by the sun. But a change arrives on the wind, a shift in the atmosphere of the great worksite. The steady, percussive sounds of distant labor falter and then cease. A deep quiet spreads across the open ground, a stillness filled with a heavy sense of anticipation. All eyes turn toward the main causeway. A slow procession comes into view, a dark shape moving through the haze of heat and dust. It is a massive wooden sledge, drawn by teams of men leaning into thick ropes of papyrus fiber. Their movements are coordinated and silent, a testament to immense, focused effort. The only sound is the deep groan of wood and the hiss of the sledge runners sliding over dampened earth. The progress is agonizingly slow. Atop the sledge rests a single block of limestone, larger and paler than any other on the site. Its color is almost pure white, without the usual streaks of ochre or gray. The edges are perfectly square, the surface is smooth, a testament to the great care taken at the quarry. It seems to absorb the harsh sunlight, holding it within to produce a soft, internal luminescence. This is a stone chosen for a sacred purpose. With immense care, the block is levered from the sledge and settled onto a prepared bed of sand. The final movement is a deep, resonant thud that seems to travel through the soles of the feet. When it is done, the laborers withdraw, leaving the stone to sit alone in the center of the courtyard. A profound silence descends around it, a zone of importance that no one dares to cross. A master carver, a figure of authority recognized by the fine quality of the linen kilt and the confident stillness of the posture, approaches the stone. The figure does not speak, but circles the block slowly, running a hand over its flawless surface. The inspection is long and meticulous. It is an act of communion, a silent assessment of the stone's spirit and potential before the work can be sanctioned. Then, the head of the master carver turns. The gaze sweeps over the other workers and settles, for a long moment, on the space where the day's work has just been completed. There is no gesture, no command. There is only a heavy, expectant look that conveys the weight of the coming responsibility. This silent assignment is a great honor and an even greater burden of perfection. You notice a small set of tools has been placed nearby, separate from the others. They are different. The copper chisels are finer, smaller, designed for the most delicate work. The wooden strikers are new, their surface is pale and unmarked. Beside them sits a small, heavy pot of deep red ochre, a pigment reserved for the most sacred of outlines, and a smooth, dark polishing stone. Approaching the great white block is like entering a cooler, quieter space. The air around it seems to buzz with a silent energy. You feel the sheer potential of the unmarked surface, a perfect emptiness waiting to be filled with divine order. To touch it would be a violation. For now, the task is only to observe, to understand the weight of what is being asked. As the sun touches the horizon, its last rays strike the face of the stone, turning it a brilliant, fiery gold. It looks less like a piece of the earth and more like a fragment of the sun itself, fallen into the world. The image is seared into the mind. This is not just another task, it is a test of skill, a duty to transform this perfect material into an eternal form. That evening, the usual fatigue in the muscles is replaced by a different sensation. It is a low hum of focus, a deep awareness of the challenge that awaits with the dawn. The familiar patterns of life feel distant. The mind is already at the worksite, contemplating the first touch of the chisel, the first irreversible mark on that silent, waiting surface of perfect white stone. The approach to the great stone at dawn is a deliberate, solitary walk. The rest of the worksite remains distant. Its usual morning sounds muted and unimportant. A temporary shelter of woven reeds has been erected around the block, creating a secluded chamber of work. To pass through the simple opening in the reed wall is to leave the ordinary world behind and enter a space dedicated to a single, focused purpose. Inside the shelter, the light is different. It is soft and diffused, filtered through the thousands of tiny gaps in the reed matting. The harsh glare of the open courtyard is gone, replaced by a calm, even glow that illuminates the white stone without casting sharp shadows. The air is still and cool, holding the last of the night's chill. All outside distraction is hushed into a low, insignificant hum. The first ritual is the water. A basin of clean, cool water rests on a low wooden stand. The hands are submerged, and the dust of the previous day is washed away. The sensation is one of purification, a cleansing not just of the skin, but of the mind. You notice the way the water magnifies the lines on the palms before it is shaken off, leaving the hands cool and ready. Next, a clean length of linen is tied around the waist. It is not heavy armor, but a simple, practical garment that keeps the fine dust from the kilt and provides a place to wipe the hands. The knot is tied with a practiced motion, a small, centering act of preparation. The feel of the fabric is a signal to the body that the time for concentrated effort has begun. The new tools are laid out on a fresh piece of leather. Each chisel is picked up, its weight and balance felt in the palm. The copper edges are examined in the soft light, their keenness a silent promise of precision. The strikers are chosen, one heavy for the rough work, one lighter for the delicate finishing touches. These are the partners in the task ahead, instruments of a focused will. A small amount of water is poured onto a grinding stone, and a stick of red ochre is rubbed against the wet surface. A thick, vibrant paste forms, the color of life's blood. This pigment will be used to transfer the draftsman's design from a sheet of dried animal skin onto the face of the stone. It is a sacred substance, the first bridge between the divine plan and the raw material. The great white block waits, impassive and silent. There is a moment of pure stillness before it, a quiet communion with the stone. It is a moment to steady the breath, to feel the solid ground beneath the feet, and to bring the mind to a single point of focus. The sheer, unmarked potential of the surface is immense, a perfect void that must be filled with absolute precision. The shelter is now a sanctuary. The world outside, the heat, the noise, the passage of other workers has dissolved. There is only the diffused light, the waiting stone, the prepared tools, and the steady rhythm of the breath. The threshold has been crossed. The space is no longer just a patch of ground, but a sealed container for an act of careful and meditative creation. You feel a profound sense of isolation that is not loneliness. It is a chosen solitude, a necessary condition for the level of concentration required. The work ahead demands an unwavering inner silence, a complete attunement to the feel of the tool in the hand and the response of the stone to each controlled strike. The mind settles and the body becomes ready. The first step is not to carve, but to look. The eyes trace the invisible lines where the design will soon be placed. The entire composition is visualized on the blank surface, the relationship of each element to the whole considered. This mental rehearsal is a critical part of the process, a silent mapping of the journey before the first step is ever taken. The preparation is now complete. The reed shelter is more than just a shield from the sun. It is a space heavy with unseen presence. The air itself seems dense with the accumulated knowledge of generations. You feel it as a quiet pressure, a sense of being observed not by a person, but by the craft itself. Every tool, every technique, every line to be carved is a legacy, a perfected method passed down through a long, unbroken chain. The master carver enters the enclosure, moving with a deliberate and silent grace. The figure's presence changes the atmosphere, charging it with a deep, authoritative calm. There is no instruction, no exchange of words. The master simply stands near the wall, a silent witness to the work. This is the tradition made manifest, a living vessel of the standard to which all work must aspire. The scent within the enclosure is clean and mineral. It is the smell of the white limestone, a dry, chalky fragrance that is different from the common stone of the courtyard. It mixes with the faint, metallic tang of the copper tools and the subtle scent of the woven reeds, creating a unique and sacred atmosphere. This is the pure aroma of the work, unpolluted by the outside world. A small papyrus roll, tightly bound with a leather cord, has been placed on a low wooden stool. It contains the master design, the original drawing from which all measurements and lines will be taken. Its surface is brittle and ancient, a fragile vessel for a powerful idea. The object emanates a palpable sense of importance, a direct link to the will of the gods and the authority of the pharaoh. The master carver unrolls the papyrus with slow, careful movements. The surface is covered in a grid of fine red lines, and within this grid is the perfect form of a seated god. The lines are not just a sketch. They are a precise, mathematical formula for beauty and divine proportion. The image is a piece of captured order, a map for bringing a fragment of the celestial realm into the world of stone. The silence in the shelter is not empty. It is filled with the weight of expectation. It is the silence of a library, a place of deep and focused study. The gaze of the master carver is not one of judgment, but of profound concentration. It is a shared focus on the task, a silent partnership where the master's experience guides the hand of the apprentice through sheer, unspoken presence. You notice the way the master's hands are held. They are perfectly still, resting one atop the other. The skin is weathered and scarred with the small white marks of a lifetime of working with stone, yet the posture is one of complete serenity. These hands have performed this same task thousands of times. They hold the memory of the stone's every possible response, every potential flaw, every secret. The light inside the shelter shifts as the sun climbs higher in the sky. Beams of bright white light pierce the reed matting, creating moving patterns on the ground. They are like slow-moving sundials, marking the passage of time in this sealed environment. The work has its own time, separate from the world outside, measured not in hours, but in the steady progress of the tool against the stone. You feel the profound responsibility to honor the tradition. The hand holding the chisel must not falter, not out of fear of punishment, but out of a deep reverence for the perfection of the form. To make a mistake is to fail the generations of carvers who came before, to dishonor the sacred pattern. The pressure is immense, but it is a steadying weight, not a crushing one. The master carver gives a single, slow nod. It is a signal to begin. The gesture is small, almost imperceptible, but it carries the full authority of the tradition. It is permission to make the first mark, to begin the transformation. The silent presence will remain, a constant and grounding force, ensuring that the work proceeds according to the ancient and unchanging laws of the craft. The master carver takes a fine-tipped reed brush and dips it into the pot of wet ochre. The movement is slow, deliberate, a study in economy of motion. The brush is not simply dipped, but turned, ensuring the bristles are evenly coated and hold the perfect amount of pigment. No drop is wasted. The process is a silent lesson in the importance of preparation and the conservation of precious materials. The brush is then brought to the white face of the stone. For a long moment, it hovers, not touching the surface. This is the first principle, the pause before the action. It is a moment of absolute stillness, a gathering of focus before the irreversible mark is made. The body of the master is a statue, the breath controlled and almost imperceptible. The entire being is concentrated into that single, steady point. With a fluid, unbroken movement, the first vertical line of the grid is drawn. The pressure is perfectly even, the speed constant. The result is a line of unwavering thickness and impossible straightness, a slash of vivid red against the pale stone. You notice there is no tremor, no hesitation. The hand is not guiding the brush so much as allowing it to follow a path already perfected in the mind. The master carve then places a hand on the shoulder. The pressure is light but firm, a silent instruction to pay close attention. The master's own chest rises and falls in a slow, deep rhythm, and the pressure on the shoulder guides the body to match it. This is the core of the code, the breath. The breath is the anchor of the hand, the source of stillness. A chisel and striker are taken up by the master. The tools seem to be a natural extension of the arm, held with a familiarity that speaks of a lifetime of use. The chisel is not gripped tightly, but rested in the hand, its position secured by the fingers, not by force. This relaxed grip is essential, allowing the tool to vibrate and communicate the texture of the stone back to the hand. The master demonstrates the angle of the cut. The chisel is held not perpendicular to the stone, but at a slight incline. This angle allows the edge to slice away the material, rather than simply crushing it. A slight turn of the wrist shows how to guide the chip, to control how it breaks away from the main block. It is a subtle but critical technique that prevents uncontrolled fracturing of the stone. The first strike is impossibly soft. The wooden striker makes a quiet, muffled sound against the end of the chisel. A tiny flake of stone, no bigger than a grain of sand, is detached. The master repeats the motion, a series of light, controlled taps. This is the lesson of patience. The stone is not conquered with force, but persuaded, grain by grain, to yield its form. You feel the focus required for such a delicate process. It is a state of deep listening, of paying attention to the sound of each strike and the feel of the vibration through the tool. The master's movements are a physical manifestation of this heightened awareness. The eyes are fixed on the point of contact, but the entire body is sensing the response of the stone, a silent, ongoing dialogue. A heavier striker is then used. The sound is sharper, a clear, resonant note. A larger chip of stone is removed, precisely along the ochre line. The master shows how the force of the blow comes not from the arm, but from the shoulder and back, a controlled release of weight that is both powerful and precise. The body is used as a pendulum, its own mass providing the energy for the strike. Then, a hand is placed over the hand, holding the chisel. The master's grip is cool and dry, guiding the fingers into the correct, relaxed position. The pressure adjusts the angle of the tool against the stone, a minute correction that is felt deep in the bones of the arm. It is a transfer of knowledge that goes beyond sight, a physical impartation of the correct feeling, the correct tension. The master carver steps back, leaving the tools in place. The demonstration is over. The silence that follows is not empty, but filled with the resonance of the lesson. The code is not a set of rules to be memorized, but a physical state to be embodied. The steady breath, the relaxed hand, the patient strike, and the unwavering focus. The white stone waits, ready for the application of this silent, powerful knowledge. The reed shelter has become the entire world. Its woven walls, once a simple screen against the sun, now form an absolute boundary between the work and everything else. The walls are a textured pattern of light and shadow, a constant, unchanging landscape. They muffle the sounds of the outside world into a distant, irrelevant murmur, creating a profound sense of isolation. This small space is a sanctuary, dedicated and pure. Light filters through the reeds, creating a calm, golden luminescence. As the sun moves across the sky, long, thin beams of brighter light creep across the floor and up the side of the great stone. They act as a slow, silent clock, the only measure of the passing day. You notice how the quality of the light changes, from the cool white of morning to the warm, honeyed tones of late afternoon. The floor is fine, clean sand, raked smooth each morning. It is a soft, yielding surface that absorbs sound and makes every footstep silent. Small piles of white limestone dust accumulate around the base of the block, a pale, soft testament to the day's progress. The sand is a canvas that records the small movements of the work, a map of stillness and effort. At the center of this space, the stone block dominates. It is an altar, a mountain, a silent god. Its presence is immense, a solid fact around which all movement and thought must orient. The longer the time spent in its presence, the more it seems to possess a life of its own. It is the sole focus, the single object of devotion in this sealed chamber of creation. Yet, the sanctuary is also a cage. The same walls that provide focus also create an unyielding confinement. There is no view of the horizon, no sense of the vast sky. The world is reduced to this single, repetitive task. The body is bound to this small circle of sand, and the mind is chained to the unwavering pursuit of the perfect line. Freedom lies only in the completion of the work. The air inside grows heavy and warm as the day progresses. It becomes thick with the fine, chalky dust from the carving, a white haze that hangs in the still atmosphere. Each breath is a breath of the stone itself, a constant, physical reminder of the material that defines this existence. The enclosure holds the effort, trapping the heat and dust of the labor within its fragile walls. The tools are the only companions. They lie on their leather cloth, a small armory of purpose. The cool, dense weight of the copper, the smooth, worn texture of the wooden strikers. These are the familiar certainties in this quiet, focused world. They are the only things that connect the intention in the mind to the reality of the stone. Outside of them, there is nothing. You feel the subtle claustrophobia of the space, a slight pressure on the chest that is not entirely physical. It is the weight of the task, the demand for perfection that feels almost unattainable. The reed walls, once a comfort, can feel like they are slowly closing in, shrinking the world down to the single, terrifying point where the chisel meets the stone. When the work is done for the day and the shelter is exited, the return to the open air is a shock. The scale of the world feels immense, the light blindingly bright. The sounds of the worksite rush in, a chaotic and overwhelming flood. For a moment, the vastness feels alien. The mind and body have become accustomed to the tight, controlled silence of the sanctuary. The primary tool is the copper chisel. Its weight in the hand is familiar, a dense, cool presence. The shaft is worn smooth from countless hours of being held, polished to a dull sheen by the oils of the skin. The end where the striker makes contact is burred and flattened, a testament to thousands upon thousands of precise, controlled blows. It is less an object and more a hardened, purposeful finger. When the chisel's edge is pressed against the limestone, it communicates the nature of the stone. You feel the slight crunch of the surface giving way, the subtle variations in density, the hard inclusions that must be worked around. The tool is an antenna, translating the silent language of the material into vibrations that travel up the arm, informing the force of the next strike before it is even delivered. The wooden striker is the counterpoint to the chisel. It is made from a heavy, dense acacia wood, and its shape is a simple, rounded cylinder. One end is wider than the other, providing a broad surface for the hand to grip. The wood is warm to the touch, and the grain has been raised slightly by the constant cycle of sweat and drying, providing a secure, textured grip. The face of the striker, the part that meets the chisel, is deeply compressed and scarred. It is a landscape of tiny dents and concentric rings, the recorded history of every blow it has ever delivered. It is not a hammer for smashing, but an instrument of persuasion. Its weight, when swung in a controlled arc, provides a precise and repeatable impulse, a pulse of energy that is channeled through the chisel. A different kind of tool is the polishing stone. It is a small, dark, and perfectly smooth piece of basalt, shaped by a river over centuries. It fits neatly into the palm of the hand, its coolness a welcome sensation against the skin. It has no sharp edge, no point of impact. Its purpose is not to remove material, but to transform it through pressure and friction, to bring a dull surface to a soft, reflective sheen. The polishing stone is worked in slow, circular motions against the carved limestone. A small amount of fine, wet sand acts as an abrasive. The sound is a soft, rhythmic hiss, a whisper of stone against stone. The process is slow and meditative, requiring a steady, even pressure. It is the final act of refinement, erasing the marks of the chisel and creating a surface that feels like cool, smooth skin. You notice how the three tools represent a complete cycle of work. The chisel is for the sharp, decisive removal of material, the creation of lines and depths. The striker is the controlled force that gives the chisel its voice. And the polishing stone is for the final, gentle persuasion, the act of bringing the finished form to its highest state of grace and perfection. Each tool has its own balance, its own feel. After hours of work, the hand and the tool become a single entity. The mind does not think about holding the chisel. It simply thinks about the line it wants to create, and the hand-tool combination executes the intention without conscious thought. They are extensions of the will, conduits through which a mental image is made manifest in the physical world. The fine reed brush used for the ochre lines is another kind of extension. It is light and delicate, an instrument for thought rather than force. Its fine tip can hold a single, perfect drop of pigment. When touched to the stone, it releases its burden in a clean, predictable line. It is a tool of pure intellect, translating the mathematical perfection of the papyrus grid onto the working surface. Over time, the hand itself is shaped by the tools. Calluses form in the exact places where the wood and copper press. The muscles of the forearm and shoulder develop a specific kind of strength, an endurance for repetitive, precise motion. The body adapts, becoming a more perfect and efficient machine for the singular purpose of carving stone. The tools shape the worker as much as the worker wields the tools. When the tools are cleaned at the end of the day, it is an act of respect. The fine limestone dust is wiped from the copper to prevent corrosion. The wooden handles are rubbed with a small amount of oil to keep them from cracking in the dry air. They are then wrapped in their leather cloth, a careful ritual that acknowledges their essential role in the sacred work. The days have settled into a new, focused rhythm, distinct from the communal labor of the main work site. The morning no longer begins with the broad, shared effort of the many, but with the solitary, ritualized entry into the reed shelter. The world has shrunk, and its clock is now the slow crawl of light beams across the sand floor, not the movement of overseers or the position of the sun. Sustenance arrives silently. A wooden bowl is placed just outside the reed shelter's entrance in the middle of the day. It contains a portion of thick, savory lentil stew, richer than the usual fare. The steam rises from it, carrying the scent of garlic and cumin. A small piece of flatbread, still warm and soft, rests on the edge of the bowl, its surface dotted with dark, toasted spots. The act of eating is now a brief, deliberate pause within the sanctuary of work. The food is consumed slowly, the focus still on the stone. The earthy flavor of the lentils, the slight char of the bread, are grounding sensations, a connection to the physical body. It is fuel, not a communal meal, a simple and efficient transfer of energy to allow the deep concentration of the afternoon to continue without interruption. The old rhythm was dictated by the raw needs of the massive construction hauling, lifting, rough shaping. It was a rhythm of large muscles and broad, powerful movements. The new rhythm is one of small, precise motions, of sustained tension in the fingers and wrist. You feel the fatigue not as a deep ache in the back, but as a fine tremor in the hand that must be stilled by a conscious act of will. Thirst is quenched differently now. A dedicated water jar, smaller and made of finer clay, sits in the coolest corner of the shelter. The water is cooler, cleaner, brought separately for this task. Each sip is a conscious act of preservation, a way of maintaining the clarity of the mind and the steadiness of the hand. It is a tool for focus, as essential as the chisel or the striker. As evening approaches, the work does not end with a general signal. It ends when the light within the shelter is no longer perfect, when the subtle shifts in shadow threaten the precision of the cut. The decision to stop is a solitary one, based on the specific needs of the delicate task. The tools are cleaned with a slow, meditative care that was not possible in the hurried end of a normal workday. The nights have changed as well. Sleep is deeper, yet the mind is not entirely at rest. The shapes of the hieroglyphs, the feel of the chisel cutting into the stone, persist in the quiet darkness. The hands, even when still, seem to retain a memory of the tools, a slight tension in the fingers. The work has followed the body home, becoming a part of its resting state. You notice the world outside the shelter seems louder, more chaotic than before. The casual movements and sounds of the camp are a jarring contrast to the intense, controlled stillness of the workspace. The new rhythm has created a different kind of perception, a heightened sensitivity to the perfect quiet required for the work. The former world has become a distraction, a place of noise and uncontrolled energy. This new cycle is all-consuming. It is a complete immersion in a single purpose, from the first moment of waking to the last moments of consciousness at night. The body and mind have been recalibrated to a finer, more demanding frequency. The old life of a simple stone worker has been shed, replaced by the solitary, elevated discipline of the relief carver, a servant to the sacred form. The great stone block has been smoothed, but it is not yet ready. The true preparation begins now, a series of slow, deliberate actions that sanctify the material. A flat, heavy rubbing stone is taken up. Its surface is coarse, its weight substantial in the hands. It is moved in slow, overlapping circles across the face of the white limestone, an act of final, perfect polishing that erases any remaining texture. The sound is a low, abrasive whisper, the only noise in the still air of the reed shelter. A fine, flour-like dust rises from the surface, coating the arms in a pale film. The work is not strenuous, but requires an unwavering, even pressure. The entire body is engaged in the slow, rhythmic motion, a meditative dance of refinement. The goal is a surface not just flat, but absolutely pure. After a long period of rubbing, the dust is brushed away with a soft cloth. A hand is then passed lightly over the prepared surface. You feel a profound change in the stone. It is no longer rough or porous, but has the coolness and tautness of stretched skin. It is a perfect void, a silent and receptive canvas that has been purified and made ready for the sacred marks it will soon receive. Next, the preparation of the pigment begins. In a small, heavy stone bowl, a lump of dry red ochre rests. It is a piece of the earth, dark and crumbly. A stone pestle, smooth and rounded, is used to crush it. The first motion creates a sharp crack as the lump fractures. Then, a slow, circular grinding motion begins, the stone of the pestle working against the stone of the bowl. The gritty sound of the grinding is a patient, rhythmic scraping. The dark red lump is slowly reduced to a coarse powder, then to a fine, almost weightless dust. The color brightens as the particles shrink, transforming from a dull, earthy brown to a vibrant, fiery red. The air fills with the dry, mineral scent of the powdered iron oxide. The raw earth has been transformed into pure color. A small amount of water, mixed with a sticky sap from an acacia tree, is added to the bowl. A few drops are stirred into the red dust with a wooden stick. The pigment darkens instantly, the dry powder absorbing the liquid and becoming a thick, rich paste. The consistency must be perfect, not too thin to run, not too thick to flow. It is the precise substance needed for creating the guiding lines. A length of papyrus fiber cord is coiled and then dipped into the wet ochre paste. It is drawn through slowly, ensuring every fiber is saturated with the deep red color. The cord, once light and dry, is now heavy and damp, a vessel of pure line and measure. It is held carefully to avoid smudging the precious pigment before it can be applied to the stone. This saturated cord is stretched taut across the smoothed face of the stone, held in place at 2 measured points. There is a moment of intense focus as the line is made perfectly horizontal. Then the center of the cord is pulled back a short distance from the stone and released. It snaps against the surface with a dull, satisfying sound, leaving behind a flawless, razor-sharp red line. The process is repeated meticulously, creating a perfect grid across the entire working area. Each line is a boundary, a piece of a divine, mathematical order being laid upon the raw material. The stark contrast of the red lines on the pristine white surface is breathtaking. It is a map of the work to come, a framework of perfection that will guide every single strike of the chisel. Finally, the tools themselves must be prepared. The edge of a copper chisel is rested upon a flat, wet block of sandstone. The chisel is pushed forward and pulled back in long, steady strokes, maintaining a precise and constant angle. The sound is a low, metallic hiss, and you notice the water on the sharpening stone turning a cloudy gray with fine particles of abraded copper, a sacrifice for a perfect edge. The sharpened edge is inspected in the soft light. It gleams, a thin sliver of brightness capable of slicing, not shattering. The tool is no longer just a piece of metal. It has been given a purpose, an edge of pure intention. With the surface prepared, the grid in place, and the tools honed to their keenest state, the period of preparation is over. All is in readiness. The moment arrives, all preparation is complete. The reed shelter is a pocket of profound silence, a sealed vessel waiting for the first act of creation. The master carver has withdrawn, leaving the space empty of all presence but one. The air is cool and still, heavy with the dry scent of stone and the faint, earthy smell of the ochre grid. There is nothing left to do but begin. The tools are taken up, their familiar weight a grounding presence in the hands. The copper chisel feels cool and dense, the wooden striker warm and light. They are held not in a tight grip of tension, but with a relaxed readiness, allowing them to become extensions of the body. The muscles in the arm and shoulder are loose, prepared for the long, repetitive work ahead without any unnecessary strain. The focus narrows to a single intersection of the red ochre grid. This small square of white stone will be the beginning. It is the place where the form of the hieroglyph for life will first emerge from the blank surface. The eyes trace the shape of the ankh, visualizing the final form within the rough stone, seeing the shadows that will be cast before a single chip has been removed. There is a long, deliberate pause. This is the final calibration. The body is positioned before the stone, the feet planted firmly on the sand floor, creating a stable, balanced foundation. You feel the connection to the earth rising through the legs, providing an anchor for the precise work of the hands. The posture is one of both immense stability and complete potential for controlled motion. The breath, which has been slow and steady, is now consciously controlled. A deep inhalation fills the lungs, and then a slow, measured exhalation follows, releasing any lingering tension from the body. The rhythm is established. Breathe in, stillness; breathe out, release. This internal pulse will govern the pace of the work, ensuring that each strike is delivered with a calm and focused mind. The chisel is brought to the stone. Its newly sharpened edge hovers a hair's breadth from the white surface, aligned perfectly with one of the red ochre lines. The world shrinks. The vast worksite outside, the reed shelter, even the rest of the great stone blocket all fades away. The entire universe is now contained in the tiny space between the gleaming copper edge and the waiting limestone. The eyes do not blink. The gaze is fixed, unwavering. Every minute detail of the stone's surface is observed, the tiny crystalline structures, the almost invisible variations in color. The point of contact is not just seen, but understood. The mind calculates the precise angle, the exact amount of force needed for the first, irreversible cut. There is no room for doubt or hesitation. You notice a profound stillness settling deep in the bones. The heart rate slows. The faint tremor that sometimes lives in the muscles of the hand is gone, replaced by an absolute steadiness. This is the state of perfect readiness, a moment of pure potential before the kinetic release. It is a moment that feels as if it could stretch for an eternity, a silent communion with the material. The striker is raised. The movement is slow, fluid, and deliberate. It is not an act of aggression, but one of careful preparation. The mind is empty of all thought except for the single, clear intention to begin. The silence in the shelter deepens, becoming absolute. The air itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for the first sound, the first small act of transformation. In this final, elongated moment, there is no past and no future. There is no memory of the long preparation, no thought of the finished product. There is only the now, the steady hand, the sharp tool, the waiting stone. The entire being is gathered into this single point of action. The calibration is complete, the hand is ready, the first strike is about to fall. The striker descends. The first contact is not a loud crack, but a sharp, clean tap, a sound absorbed by the great mass of the stone. A tiny crescent-shaped chip of limestone detaches and falls silently to the sand below. The first mark has been made. It is a small, almost insignificant indentation, yet it is a profound and irreversible step. The perfect surface is broken, and the process of revealing the form has begun. A rhythm is established immediately. Tap. A chip falls. Tap. Another chip falls. The movements are small, economical, and precise. The striker rises and falls in a short, controlled arc. The chisel, held in the other hand, remains perfectly steady, its edge advancing along the red ochre line by a fraction of an inch after each strike. The body settles into this metronomic cadence, a human clock measuring progress in tiny increments of stone. The world outside the red ochre line ceases to exist. The mind is no longer aware of the reed shelter, the heat, or the passage of time. All consciousness is poured into the sensory loop of the work. The eyes watch the chisel's edge. The hand feels the vibration of the strike. The ears register the exact pitch and timbre of the sound, confirming the quality of the cut. You feel the stone communicating through the copper shaft of the chisel. A slight increase in resistance signals a denser part of the limestone, requiring a fraction more force from the striker. A softer, grittier feedback means the stone is more porous, demanding a gentler touch to avoid crumbling. The hand adjusts instinctively, responding to this silent, tactile language without conscious thought. The work becomes a conversation. The sound of the tapping is the only reality. It is a sharp, staccato beat that is both the cause and effect of the intense focus. Each clean note is a confirmation of a successful cut, a small victory in the slow campaign against the raw material. The rhythm of the work becomes a kind of incantation, a percussive chant that deepens the state of concentration and holds all distraction at bay. A fine, white dust begins to accumulate around the point of work. It is the ghost of the removed stone, a soft powder that blurs the sharp red line. Periodically, the rhythm is broken by a new action. A soft puff of air from the lungs, a controlled exhalation that blows the dust away, revealing the clean, sharp edge of the newly carved channel. The line is checked, the focus renewed, and the rhythm resumes. The eyes, unblinking, see with an unnatural clarity. The microscopic texture of the stone, the way the light catches on the crystalline facets of a newly exposed surface, the subtle shadow that begins to form in the shallow trench, all are observed with a heightened, almost painful intensity. The visual field has narrowed to this single point, and within that point, every detail is magnified. The body forgets itself. The ache in the shoulder, the tension in the back, the growing thirsty sensations fade into a distant background hum. The physical self has become a machine, a dedicated instrument for executing the will of the focused mind. There is no sense of self, only the process, the eye that sees, the hand that strikes, the stone that yields. The ego is dissolved in the rhythm. The work now approaches a critical point, the delicate curve at the top of the ankh. A straight line is a simple negotiation with the stone, but a curve is a far more complex dialogue. It requires a constant, subtle adjustment of angle and force. The steady, metronomic rhythm of the work ceases. A deep, anchoring breath is taken, held for a moment, and then released in a slow, controlled stream. The chisel is lifted from the stone. The hand, holding the tool, rotates at the wrist, a barely perceptible motion. The sharp edge is repositioned, no longer parallel to a straight line, but at a slight tangent to the beginning of the curve. The angle is everything. Too steep and the cut will dig too deep, creating a harsh, angular break. Too shallow, and the chisel will skate across the surface, marring the stone. The first strike on this curve is impossibly gentle. The wooden striker moves a tiny distance, driven not by the arm, but by a minute contraction of the muscles in the hand. The sound is not a sharp tap, but a soft, dull puff, almost inaudible. You feel a faint, granular vibration through the chisel, a sign that only a few crystals of stone have been dislodged. The first facet of the curve is made. The chisel is lifted again. It is moved a fraction of a millimeter along the red ochre line. The wrist rotates again, a tiny adjustment to maintain the perfect tangent to the imagined arc. The breath is released another fraction. The mind is a geometric instrument, calculating the next point on a perfect circle that does not yet exist. The entire body is focused on this microscopic shift. The second strike is delivered with the same exquisitely controlled force. Another tiny flake of stone is removed. The process is repeated, strike, lift, move, rotate, strike again. A series of tiny, flat planes is being created, a sequence of minute cuts that, to the naked eye, will appear as a single, fluid curve. It is the creation of an illusion through painstaking, incremental precision. You notice the sweat beading on the brow. It is not from heat or exertion, but from the sheer intensity of the concentration. A single drop traces a slow path down the side of the face, an external sign of the immense internal effort. The muscles in the gripping hand are not tight, but they are alive with a silent, focused energy, holding the tool with a pressure that is as delicate as it is unyielding. The deepest part of the curve is now being worked. Here, the stone is most vulnerable to a transverse fracture. The grain of the limestone, invisible to the eye, runs counter to the desired cut. The chisel communicates this silent resistance, a subtle deadening of the vibration. The force of the strike is reduced even further, persuading the stone rather than commanding it, chipping away dust rather than flakes. The curve is completed. The final tiny facet connects back to a straight line. The chisel is carefully lifted, its work in this critical section done. A slow, full breath is taken, the first relaxed inhalation since the sequence began. The body releases a tension it was not even aware of holding. The most difficult passage has been navigated successfully. The integrity of the form is preserved. With the delicate curve successfully carved, the tension releases like a held breath. The hyper-focused state softens, and awareness slowly expands beyond the point of the chisel. The hand holding the striker loosens its grip, and the heavy wooden tool is set down on the leather cloth with a soft, muffled sound. The silence that follows is different, no longer a tense, expectant quiet, but a calm, resonant stillness of accomplishment. A deep, physical release washes through the body. The shoulders, held tight with concentration, drop slightly. The muscles in the back, braced for precise control, unclench. You feel a warmth spreading through the chest, a quiet wave of relief that follows the successful navigation of a difficult passage. The internal pressure that drove the critical action dissolves, leaving a profound sense of peace in its wake. The world outside the immediate workspace begins to filter back into perception. The low hum of the distant work site, previously silenced by the intensity of focus, becomes audible once more. The sound of the wind rustling the reed walls of the shelter is noticed for the first time in hours. These are the sounds of the ordinary world returning, a gentle re-entry into the normal flow of time. The eyes lift from the stone, blinking slowly. The intense focus on the microscopic details gives way to a broader view. The gaze takes in the whole of the hieroglyph, the clean lines of the shallow relief, the way the soft light from the reeds creates a gentle shadow within the carved channel. The critical curve is no longer a series of terrifyingly small decisions, but a single, graceful arc. A hand, free of its tool, reaches out and gently brushes away the fine white dust from the completed curve. The limestone beneath is cool and smooth, the newly exposed surface pristine. The finger traces the arc, feeling the perfect, unbroken line that the eye now sees. The tactile confirmation is deeply satisfying, a physical connection to the successful outcome of the intense effort. The rhythm of the breath, which had been consciously controlled and shallow, returns to its natural, deeper cadence. Each inhalation feels fuller, each exhalation a more complete release. The body, having been a rigid instrument of precision, remembers its own softness, its own simple biological needs. A sudden awareness of thirst arises, a signal that the period of intense mental exertion is truly over. The mind lets go of the sharp, geometric calculations. The constant, silent litany of angle, pressure, and impact fades away. In its place, a quiet emptiness settles, a mental state that is not tired but serene. The challenge has been met, the test has been passed. The stone did not fracture, the line did not break. The order of the design remains pure and undefiled. The work will continue, but the peak of the day's trial is over. The rest of the carving, while still demanding care, does not hold the same level of risk as that single, complex curve. A sense of calm confidence settles in. The most difficult question has been asked of the stone, and the stone has answered favorably. The partnership between the material, the tool, and the hand remains intact. The final layer of fine dust is blown away with a soft, controlled breath. The white limestone, now carved and smoothed, stands revealed in the quiet light of the reed shelter. The silence that follows is not the emptiness of waiting, but the fullness of completion. The stone is no longer a raw block from the earth. It has been transformed into a vessel of meaning, a capture of the divine order in physical form. The afternoon sun, filtering through the gaps in the woven walls, has shifted its angle. It casts long, oblique rays across the face of the relief, filling the carved channels with deep, precise shadows. These shadows are the true ink of the sculptor, giving the image its volume and life. The symbol of the ankh rises from the background, its loop perfect, its crossbar level, appearing to float just above the surface. You notice the contrast between the uncarved negative space and the raised relief. The background has been dressed back to a flat, uniform plane, a sea of stillness that allows the figure to emerge. The raised surface of the hieroglyph is polished to a satin sheen, catching the light and holding it. It possesses a tactile quality, a smoothness that invites the hand to verify what the eye sees. The entrance to the shelter darkens as the master carver steps inside. The air in the small space instantly feels denser, charged with the weight of judgment. There is no greeting, no exchange of pleasantries. The presence of the master is the inspection itself. The figure moves slowly toward the stone, the eyes narrowing to exclude all else, focusing entirely on the interplay of light, shadow, and line. The inspection begins with a visual sweep. The master's gaze travels down the vertical axis of the design, checking the alignment against the faint remains of the red ochre guide lines. It is a search for symmetry, for the mathematical truth that governs the art. The silence is absolute, broken only by the dry rustle of the master's linen kilt and the faint sound of breathing. Then a hand is raised. It is a hand that knows the stone better than it knows its own history, the skin thickened and mapped with the scars of the craft. The fingers extend and lightly brush the surface of the relief. This is the true test. The eye can be deceived by light and shadow, but the hand feels the truth of the curve, the consistency of the depth, the fluidity of the line. The fingers pause at the critical curve of the ankh, the place where the risk of fracture was highest. The master's thumb traces the arc, moving back and forth over the transition from straight line to curve. There is no snag, no hesitation in the movement. The stone flows under the touch, smooth and continuous. The tactile feedback confirms that the hand of the carver was steady, the mind focused. Next, the depth of the relief is measured. The master places a flat wooden gauge across the surface, checking that the background has been recessed to a uniform depth. A single high spot, a single uneven patch, would disrupt the shadow and break the illusion of the form. The gauge slides silently across the stone, meeting no resistance, finding no flaw in the leveled sea of limestone. The scrutiny is intense, a silent interrogation of the work's integrity. Every hour of labor, every drop of sweat, every moment of held breath is being weighed in this quiet span of minutes. The stakes are not praise or payment, but the right of the stone to exist within the temple. Only perfection is permitted to house the spirit of the god. Anything less is an insult to the order of the world. Finally, the master steps back. The hand falls away from the stone. There is a moment of heavy stillness, a pause that seems to stretch the air. Then, a single, slow nod is given. It is a small gesture, barely a movement of the head, but in this world of silence and stone, it is a thunderous affirmation. The work is accepted. The standard has been met. There is no smile, no clasping of shoulders. Such things belong to the world of men. This is a transaction between the craft and the eternal. The nod is a signal that the carver has successfully dissolved the self to become a clear channel for the tradition. The stone is no longer the work of an individual. It is now a part of the great, anonymous legacy of the temple. You feel a profound settling in the chest, a release of a weight that had been carried since the first strike of the chisel. It is a quiet, deep satisfaction, a resonance with the stability of the stone itself. The anxiety of the process evaporates, replaced by the enduring calm of the result. The object exists, and it is right. That is the only reward that matters. The master turns and leaves the shelter, the shadow retreating from the entrance. The stone stands alone again, but it has changed. It holds the light differently now. It has a presence, a gravity. The tools are gathered and cleaned, the copper wiped free of dust, the wood oiled. They are laid to rest beside the finished work, silent witnesses to the act of creation, their purpose fulfilled for the day. Stepping out of the reed shelter at the end of the day is a profound transition. The world rushes back in a flood of sensory information. The blinding intensity of the late afternoon sun, the vast, open expanse of the sky, the distant, chaotic sounds of the main worksite, it is all overwhelming after the focused silence. The body stands still for a moment, recalibrating to the scale of the ordinary world. The path away from the worksite is taken with slow, deliberate steps. The usual exhaustion is absent, replaced by a deep, bone-weary satisfaction. The fine white dust that coats the skin is a pale reminder of the day's labor, a uniform that is now worn with a sense of quiet accomplishment. The air, thick with the heat of the day, feels different, lighter, now that the weight of the task has been lifted. The day's final ritual takes place at the edge of the great river. The water, warmed by the sun, is a silken embrace. Wading in up to the waist, the coolness of the current below the surface is a welcome shock. The water swirls around the body, and the accumulated dust of the day dissolves in cloudy plumes, washing away the physical evidence of the work and leaving the skin clean. Submerging the head is a complete release. The world of air and sound vanishes, replaced by a muted blue-green silence. The pressure of the water is a gentle, consistent embrace, and the feeling is one of returning to a primal, quiet state. For a few moments there is no thought, no memory of the day's intense focus, only the serene, weightless sensation of being held by the river. Emerging from the water, the world seems newborn. The colors are sharper, the sounds clearer. The setting sun paints the western sky in hues of deep orange and purple, a spectacle of celestial beauty that went unnoticed during the long hours of intense focus. You notice the cool evening breeze on the wet skin, a sensation that is both soothing and invigorating, a true awakening of the senses. the evening meal is taken in the quiet solitude of the dwelling. It is the simple fare of a worker, a bowl of cooked barley, a handful of dates, a piece of dried fish. But tonight, the flavors are extraordinarily vivid. The sweetness of the dates is intense, the saltiness of the fish sharp and clean. The senses, having been suppressed in the service of the work, are now fully awake and receptive. After the meal, the body settles onto the simple sleeping mat. The rough fibers, usually a source of minor discomfort, now feel grounding, a connection to the solid earth. The muscles, which were held in a state of controlled tension for so long, now release completely. You feel a profound heaviness in the limbs, a pleasant, leaden fatigue that promises a night of deep, dreamless sleep. The mind, which had been a tool of intense calculation and focus, is now allowed to drift. It does not dwell on the work of the day, nor does it anticipate the work of tomorrow. It is simply empty, a clear, still pool reflecting the quiet darkness of the small room. The constant, internal voice of precision and judgment has fallen silent, its purpose fulfilled. There is no sense of triumph, no pride in the ego. The feeling is one of quiet harmony, of having played a small but perfect part in the great cosmic order. The body and mind were lent to a purpose larger than the self, and now, that purpose served, they are returned to their own simple existence. The release is not from a burden, but from a state of heightened responsibility. As sleep begins to take hold, the last sensation is the memory of the finished stone. Not the image of the hieroglyph, but the feeling of the smooth, cool surface under the fingertips. It is a feeling of permanence, of a thing well and truly made. It is a quiet anchor in the drifting consciousness, a silent confirmation that the day's energy was not spent, but transformed into something that will endure. The deep quiet of the night settles over the land. The sounds of the day have faded completely, replaced by the gentle chirping of insects and the distant whisper of the river. The body is still, the mind is calm. The great cycle of effort and release is complete. There is only the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of the breath, a quiet engine resting after its long and perfect labor. Hardship in this world is not seen as an enemy to be conquered, but as a fundamental condition of existence, like the heat of the sun or the flooding of the river. It is a constant pressure to be managed, not a crisis to be overcome. This philosophy is visible in the very posture of the laborers, the slow, steady, and sustainable rhythm of their movements, a pace designed to be maintained for a lifetime. The great temple walls themselves are the ultimate expression of this belief. They are built to endure for eternity, an act of defiance against the decay of time. You notice the way the massive stone blocks are fitted together without mortar, their sheer weight and perfect joinery creating a stability that does not fight the earth, but settles into it, becoming a part of its deep, geological patience. Endurance is a collective, not an individual virtue. When a massive block of granite is moved on a sledge, the effort is distributed among hundreds of men. No single person bears the impossible weight. They pull together, their movements synchronized by a silent understanding. The hardship is shared, diluted, and therefore made bearable. It is the philosophy of the ant colony, not the lone wolf. The cycle of the river is the great teacher. Each year it floods, destroying and renewing. It brings chaos, but it also deposits the black, fertile silt that makes life possible. The people do not curse the flood, they adapt to its rhythm. They build their lives around its immutable power, understanding that destruction and creation are two sides of the same eternal coin. Hardship is simply part of the cycle. This acceptance is woven into the daily habits. The water jar is filled each morning, a task that is never questioned, despite its difficulty. The barley is ground each day, a repetitive labor that is never resented. These are not chores, but rituals of survival. They are the small, consistent efforts that hold back the persistent forces of thirst and hunger, a daily practice in the art of quiet, unwavering endurance. You feel this philosophy in the materials themselves. The limestone is soft and easy to carve, but it is also fragile and unforgiving. The granite is immensely hard and difficult to work, but it is also permanent. The craftsmen do not wish for a different kind of stone. They learn the unique nature of each, adapting their tools and techniques to its specific challenges. They endure the material's resistance to find its hidden beauty. The art itself is a form of endurance. The figures carved on the temple walls are not shown in moments of passion or violent action. They are depicted in states of eternal stillness and composure. The pharaoh is always serene, the gods always in perfect balance. This is not a denial of hardship, but a statement of the ideal state. A calm, unwavering spirit that can withstand any trial without losing its essential form. There is no great importance placed on individual suffering. A cut hand, a strained back, the deep ache of fatigue, these are simply the price of the work. They are acknowledged, treated, and then forgotten. The focus is always on the continuation of the task. The endurance of the great work is paramount. The temporary discomfort of the individual is insignificant in the face of an eternal project. This is a world without the luxury of despair. To give in to the heat, to the thirst, to the immense weight of the stone would be to cease to exist. Endurance is therefore not a choice. It is a fundamental law of survival, as essential as breathing. It is a quiet, deeply ingrained understanding that life is a long, slow walk, and the only way to complete the journey is to keep putting one foot in front of the other. The silence of the work site is a testament to this philosophy. There are no shouts of encouragement, no cries of pain. There is only the steady, rhythmic sound of work. The tap of the chisel, the scrape of the sledge, the whisper of the polishing stone. It is the sound of 1,000 small, persistent efforts accumulating over a vast expanse of time to create something monumental and everlasting. Even the tools reflect this idea. They are not discarded when they wear down. A copper chisel with a blunted edge is not thrown away. It is painstakingly resharpened, its material conserved, and its life extended. A wooden striker with a cracked handle is not replaced. It is carefully bound with cord, its strength restored. Everything is maintained, preserved, and made to last, a small-scale reflection of the great work itself. You notice how this approach creates a deep, unshakable calm. Because hardship is expected, it is never a surprise. Because the pace is deliberate, there is no frantic rush or wasted energy. The entire culture is a finely tuned machine for enduring the immense friction of existence. A quiet and powerful engine designed to run not for a season, but for millennia. The river floods and recedes season after season. The sun rises and sets day after day. The great work on the temple continues, a constant in a world of cycles. But the body is not stone. It is a vessel of flesh that keeps its own, more finite measure of time. The passage of years is not counted, but felt, a slow and subtle accumulation of changes, like the settling of dust. The first sign is in the hands. The fingers, once so supple and strong, begin to hold a memory of the chisel's grip, even when at rest. A dull ache settles into the knuckles, a stiffness that is more pronounced in the cool air of the morning. The fine, trembling control required for the most delicate curves becomes more difficult to summon, a faint tremor that must be consciously willed into stillness. You notice the tools themselves are aging. The copper chisel, sharpened and resharpened countless times, has grown shorter and thinner. It is a mere fraction of its original length, a sliver of metal worn down by its long conversation with the stone. The wooden striker, its face a compressed and scarred landscape, has a deep crack running through its side, held together by a tight binding of old leather cord. The eyes, too, begin their slow retreat. The sharp, red ochre lines on the pale limestone are not as clear as they once were. The subtle interplay of light and shadow in a shallow relief is harder to discern. The work must be done closer to the face, the head tilted at an angle to catch the light just so. The world of fine detail, once so vivid and immediate, begins to soften at the edges. The pace of the work slows. It is not a conscious decision, but a natural concession to the body's changing rhythm. The striker is not lifted as high, the blows are not as frequent. More time is spent in simple observation, in studying the stone before making a cut. The furious, focused energy of youth is replaced by the deliberate, measured caution of long experience. The goal is no longer speed, but the conservation of a dwindling supply of precision. A younger carver is assigned to the space, a silent apprentice who watches with the same intensity of focus that was once the sole possession of the master. There is no formal instruction. The teaching is done through observation, through the quiet example of the slowed, but still perfect, technique. The knowledge is passed not through words, but through the rhythm of the work, a legacy transferred through shared silence. One day, the hand finds it difficult to close around the striker. The stiffness in the joints resists, a silent rebellion of sinew and bone against the demands of the will. The tool is held, but the grip is uncertain. A strike is made, but it lacks the clean, resonant authority of the past. It is a quiet, personal acknowledgement that the long partnership between the body and the tool is nearing its end. The tools are cleaned one final time. The worn-down chisel is wiped free of dust, its thin, precious edge protected. The cracked striker is oiled, the leather binding checked. They are not discarded, but wrapped in a clean linen cloth and placed in a wooden box. It is a quiet, ceremonial act, the retirement of old and faithful servants. The hands that put them away will not pick them up for work again. The following morning, the path to the worksite is not taken. Instead, a seat is found in the sun, near the entrance to the dwelling. The sounds of the distant worksite, the rhythmic tapping, the shouts of the overseers, are now just a part of the morning's atmosphere, like the chirping of birds. You feel the sun on the face, a simple, uncomplicated warmth. The responsibility has been passed. The hands rest, open, on the knees. They are a map of a life's work, the skin cross-hatched with 1,000 small, white scars from slips of the chisel. The knuckles are swollen, the fingers slightly crooked, permanently shaped by the tools they held for so long. They are no longer instruments of creation, but quiet monuments to a lifetime of dedicated labor. There is no sadness in this ending. It is not a failure, but a completion. A field that has been harvested is allowed to lie fallow. A tool that is worn out is given its rest. The body, having given all of its precision and strength to the stone, has earned its own season of stillness. The great work continues, carried on by other hands, and that is as it should be. The days now follow the simple, slow rhythm of the sun. There is time to watch the boats on the river, to feel the evening breeze, to simply sit and be. The intense focus that for so long narrowed the world to the point of a chisel has relaxed, and the whole, vast panorama of life is visible once more. The quiet fading is not an emptiness, but a gentle, welcome expansion. Time dissolves, the heat of the sun, the flooding of the river, the sounds of the work site all fade into a deep and profound silence. Dynasties rise and fall like the passing of seasons. Languages are born and then forgotten. The desert sands shift, covering and uncovering the works of generations. But in the cool, still darkness beneath the earth, the stone rests, undisturbed and patient. Centuries pass like single heartbeats. The stone knows nothing of this. It remains in a state of perfect, unchanging equilibrium. The shallow relief of the Ankh, carved with such intense, focused life, holds its form in the absolute dark. The sharp edges remain sharp, the smooth curves remain smooth. The energy of its creation is held dormant within the crystalline structure of the limestone, a silent, sleeping potential. Then, a change, a sliver of light cuts through the darkness. The grit of sand and earth is carefully brushed away by hands that are soft and tentative, so different from the calloused, purposeful hands that first gave the stone its form. The air that touches the surface is cool and damp, carrying the unfamiliar scent of a world remade. The stone, after an age of sleep, is revealed once more. Now it rests in a vast, quiet room. The air is still and cool, climate-controlled and sterile. The light is soft and indirect, emanating from unseen sources in the high ceiling. It is a light designed for preservation, not for the harsh, creative judgment of the sun. The stone is mounted on a plain wall, isolated from all other objects, held up for silent contemplation in this temple of a different age. You notice there are no shadows now. The diffuse, even lighting of the great room prevents the deep, defining shadows that once gave the relief its life. The form is visible, but its spirit is muted. The Ankh is a pale ghost on a pale background, its subtle depths flattened by the gentle, unmoving light. It is preserved, but it is not alive in the way it was under the Egyptian sun. A hand separated from the stone by a pane of thick, invisible glass traces the outline of the hieroglyph. The fingers mimic the path of the ancient carver, following the straight lines and the perfect curve. There is a deep, instinctual desire to touch the surface, to feel the coolness and smoothness of the stone, but the barrier is absolute. The connection is purely visual, a distant echo of the original, tactile act of creation. The room is filled with a deep, reverent silence, but it is a different silence from that of the reed shelter. The old silence was one of focus and potential, the quiet of a workshop. This new silence is one of finality, the quiet of a tomb. The object is no longer a part of a process. It is an artifact, a finished statement, its story complete. Yet, something of the original energy remains. If one looks closely, the faint, almost invisible tool marks can be seen within the carved channel. A series of tiny, parallel facets reveal the path of the chisel, the rhythmic, incremental removal of the stone. These marks are a silent testament to the hand that made them, a faint, ghostly signature of the immense effort and concentration. The critical curve, navigated with such a suspension of breath, still holds its perfect tension. It is a line of pure, mathematical grace, an arc that feels both inevitable and miraculous. It is the focal point of the entire piece, the place where the skill of the maker is most profoundly displayed. Even under the flat, neutral light, the curve possesses a silent, undeniable power. The stone is cool to the touch, though no one can touch it. It holds a deep, geological coldness, a memory of the mountain from which it was cut. It is an object outside of human time, a piece of eternity brought into a fleeting world. The lives of its creators, its discoverers, its custodians, all are transient moments against the immense, patient lifespan of the stone itself. The room empties. The soft lights are dimmed. The stone is left alone once more, this time in a clean, curated darkness. It rests, perfect and complete. The fierce concentration, the steady hand, the controlled breath of its creation have all been transmuted into this silent, enduring form. The echo of the chisel is finally still, its vibration absorbed into the stone where it will sleep forever. There is a profound peace in its stillness. It asks for nothing. It broadcasts no message. It simply is. A perfect form released from the chaos of the raw material, now resting in a quiet, safe harbor, out of the reach of time. The journey of its making is over, but the object itself remains, a silent, eternal testament to the power of a steady, focused hand. The noise of the era fades into a low, distant hum. The struggle with the stone, the immense weight of the sun's heat, and the quiet endurance of the body all dissolve into the silent stream of time. The sharp tap of the chisel, the hiss of the polishing sand, the steady, patient rhythm of the work, all of it recedes into a deep and profound quiet, leaving no trace behind. The name of the relief carver is lost, a whisper of dust reclaimed by the desert wind, but the foundation of the work remains solid. The ancient temple stone still holds the memory of 1,000 days of heat. The divine order, captured in the carved line, still holds its silent, unshakable peace. The silence returns, heavier and deeper than it was before, filled with the weight of eternity. The images of the past, the white stone, the reed shelter, the distant, shimmering river slowly begin to recede. They fold back into the familiar shadows of the room, dissolving like mist in the morning. There is no more journey to be taken tonight. There is only the stillness of the present moment and the simple, physical sensation of the body at rest, safe and secure. The focus settles on the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of the breath. It is a quiet, natural anchor in the deep calm. There are no more lines to carve, no more challenges to meet. The story is finished. The night is safe, the mind is still, and the silence is now complete, a soft, heavy blanket that covers all things in perfect peace.